Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. Crowd-funded episode here. We're going to be talking about a campaign that's currently happening on Zoop. The campaign is called Breakneck. That's the name of the book. And I have the writer joining me today, Mark Bertolini, to tell us all about it. So, Mark, thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so for those that aren't familiar with Breakneck, similar to the vein of the boys or Invincible, a lot of action, a lot of kind of subversion of superheroes. What's the elevator pitch? How would you describe it to people?
Well, Breakneck's the story of the world's crappiest supervillain alone against the entire world of heroes.
Yeah,
So
and by crappy, we don't mean like he's a super evil guy that's really formidable, do we?
no, he's a D-list. Describes himself as a D-list villain. Uh, you know, I don't even know what an acceptable comparison would be. Like the Condiment King, you know what I mean, from DC, somebody like that.
Yeah, and what's interesting about him, his powers are okay and used the right way, that could be, pretty dangerous, pretty formidable. He could be so much more. He could be a threat, but he's kind of lazy and he's happy to just kind of let other people do the work. Although he whines plenty about being broke and not getting a bigger share of the spoils, I guess. So, uh, pretty pretty interesting character you've come up with here.
Yeah, I mean, I always like the idea of, the lovable loser, except I feel like in this case he's not really lovable, like he is kind of a dick. So um you kind of can't help but root for things to go, when things go bad. I was always, happy about that, even though I wrote it. It was always funny to see bad stuff happening to him. So
Yeah, Ethan Shade is his name, and what I find to be interesting about this, like mentioned, obviously the comparison I think a lot of people will immediately come up with is the boys because it's sort of well known ever since the Amazon show came out. Now, full disclosure, everybody, longtime listeners of the podcast will know, I didn't watch it past the first season. I didn't like the changes they made from what was in the comic, and I love that comic. But the comic came out quite a while ago, and people don't realize, and again, I guess it gets into mainstream culture and popularity because it's more widespread and it's more known. But when you wrote this originally, when the first issues came out, self-published, the boys had been out, from a Wildstorm for the first arc, and then Dynamite after that. Were you aware? Do you think it influenced anything about you creating the story and wanting to kind of tell a story of, I don't want to say superheroes gone bad because, they're not overtly doing terrible things, but they're just kind of selfish and self-centered and what have you.
yeah, I mean, I was aware of the boys, but I think the book that actually had more of an impact on Breakneck was The Authority.
Okay.
Right, The Authority was my kind of like my first taste of like more mature superhero stories. Like you said, like subverting the superhero genre, and that was really sort of the book that made me realize you don't really have to play superheroes straight every single time, right? And that was really kind of like part of the impetus behind writing Breakneck, was to try and show a different side of like superheroes and supervillains, and put the focus on one of the bad guys. Which besides like the Joker and things like that, you don't see very many bad guy centric books these days. So
Yeah, well, that's what's interesting, and it kind of leads me to my next question here. You chose to give us our POV character of Ethan Shade, who, as you said, this kind of D-list villain. And when you do have a villain who kind of headlines a book, like you said, it's usually A-list. We're talking Joker, we're talking Penguin, Poison Ivy. You could argue maybe she's a little more towards the B-list, but she's certainly been elevated. Harley Quinn, maybe not even a villain anymore with what DC's done with her, but they're certainly, more well-known and people you would sort of expect to carry a book. You chose to choose sort of this everyman D-list guy who, yeah, he's kind of a slacker. He's like you said, the lovable loser. Um, was it really bringing those two ideas together? Hey, I want a villain to kind of be our point of view character, but I also love this idea of somebody who's really just not very competent, I guess is the word we'll use.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was an interesting dynamic, right? To have a guy who, lucked into getting powers, lucked into getting on this, world-shattering supervillain team, and still just doesn't really do anything with it. Like you said, he's lazy. He doesn't try that hard, and even when he's the last villain left alive, he still can't get it together. You know what I mean? Like it's just,
Yeah.
mistake after mistake. So yeah, and to be honest, it was kind of like, if I got superpowers and I thought about being a villain, how would I go about it? Probably not well. You know what I mean? So that was sort of who, like you said, Shade's the everyman. He's got powers. He wants to be well known. He wants to be feared, but he's really just pretty bad at his job.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little be careful what you wish for, though. But I also love the subversion, right? Because I think there's only one other time that I saw this idea played with, and it was done really well in the Ultraverse. I can't remember the name of the series. But anyways, this idea that people get powers, and in sort of traditional classic superhero stories, they somehow immediately, intrinsically, instinctually know how to use them, and nothing ever goes wrong or whatever. And there was a book in the Ultraverse that had been solicited for more issues. I think up through issue 8, but it ended with issue 6 when one of the people actually didn't know how to use their powers and like blew up and killed everybody. And it was really cool. I want to say it was Steve Englehart that wrote it, but I could be wrong about that. But anyway, interesting idea because Ethan Shade, he has like I said, he has these powers, and he could, if he applied himself, be pretty dangerous and probably not screw up all the time. But he doesn't bother to take the time to even learn how to use his own powers. How much fun is it writing this character?
It was a lot of fun. He's such a goofball character, and yeah, like just the fact, like I don't want to give anything away, but in the first issue, he like clearly shows that he doesn't know the extent of his own powers or what he can and can't do with them. But it's like you said, he gets powers and he can't be bothered to learn how to do anything with it. And it's the idea of getting superpowers in comics, and it was always like as soon as you get them, you know how to fly, you know how to do all these things. But would you? You know what I mean? Like, would you really know what to do if all of a sudden you could control and manipulate these shadows that started coming out of your hands? Like, I feel like he's just, not even learning as he goes along. He just doesn't know what to do. So it's almost like, gut reaction every time he does anything. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like I always thought he was a fun character. And, you know, throughout the book, throughout the 5 issues that are actually in this new collection that we're talking about here, there's a bunch of places like moments in the book where I kind of poke fun at superheroes. Um, where I take a lot of like classic superhero tropes and sort of, play around with them a little bit. I thought it was really funny, so I hope everybody reading it thinks it's funny too.
Yeah, there's definitely some callbacks. At one point, Ethan Shade, again, we don't want to spoil too much, but I'll throw this one out there for everybody just to give kind of example of what we're talking about here when we say, playing with those superhero tropes or call back to classic stories. But anyway, there's a part where Ethan Shade's fighting against this sidekick, this Robin-like character, and he says, "Man, I wish I had a crowbar."
Yeah,
Yeah, that gave me a chuckle. I was like, oh,
yeah,
nice. We're going totally dark with this one. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So originally, I think there was 3 single issues, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. 3 single issues, and then a collected edition that had a fourth.
yeah.
And in this hardcover, there's even a fifth that has never been seen before. Is that accurate?
Yes. So we had the first 3 issues. So the series was originally published through a publisher called 215 Inc., who have since become Invader Comics. So yeah, we published the first 3 issues through Diamond. Books were in comic stores and the whole bit. And then we put out the trade paperback that had those 3 issues plus the 4th issue. And that was, for a very long time, that was all that had been seen. But we had created and finished the 5th issue, but we never had the opportunity to do anything with it. And it literally sat on my hard drive for almost 10 years. So yeah, so the hardcover is going to have that 5th issue. Nobody's ever read that 5th issue outside of the creative team. So and it actually has 2 of my favorite superhero making fun of moments in that 5th issue. There's a couple of things. Even now, I wrote that script a long time ago. Even now, when I read it, it makes me laugh. So yeah, I'm excited for people to read that, because I know not a lot of people are familiar with Breakneck, but people did read it when it first came out. Those 3 issues, we had some pretty good reader engagement, reader response. So I'm hoping they're still out there somewhere, ready to read the 4th and 5th issues.
Yeah, and again, everybody, like Mark said, if you're a fan of the Authority, we've mentioned the boys, obviously, because we're really subverting well, Mark is not we, but Mark is subverting the superhero tropes in this book. But also Invincible, and just for kind of the over the top level of like violence and blood and gore and action scenes, really reminded me of Invincible as well. So if you're a fan of any of those, I recommend that you check this out. There's a link in the show notes. You can go and check out the campaign, and we'll talk about some of the other rewards and what formats and what have you are available. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody, as I always do, that the best way you can help Mark out, other than going into Zoop and backing this so you can check it out for yourself, is to share it on social media, right? Put it out there on your X or Facebook or whatever. Tell your friends about it. Tell your comic shop about it, because it really is a wild and crazy and fun story. And we want to make sure that anybody who wants the opportunity to back the campaign has that chance, but they can't back it if they don't know about it. So maybe this sounds like it would be awesome and you want to check it out for yourself, but times are tight and you just can't, afford it right now. We get that. Times are tight for everybody. So again, share it so anybody that wants to and is able to can join the campaign. So we mentioned the hardcover that collects the 4 previously seen and then the 5th previously unseen issues of the series. Mark, what else is available in the campaign?
Yeah, so the campaign is primarily for the hardcover. There's also a couple of short stories that take place in the world of Breakneck that are going to be included in the book as well. And so there's a regular version, there's a signed version, signed by me, whether that makes you excited or not. There's a few bundles where you can also pick up. You can get some of the comics I've done previously, Bigfoot Frankenstein, Bastard's Waltz, a couple of things from my own personal collection. If you're the digital type, you can just pick up the PDF. You can get the PDF of the whole work. There's I'm offering some Zoom calls similar to this, where if you're a writer, you want to talk writing, you want to just talk comics, you want to talk Breakneck, whatever you want to do. I'd love to chat, help out some new writers if that's something that anybody might be interested in. It's not. I'm far from a pro, but I've been doing this for a decade or more at this point. So I'd love to share knowledge, share information, whatever I have. But yeah, really the big thing is the hardcover, which I think Zoop does gorgeous hardcovers. I don't know if you've seen any of their previous hardcover books, but
Oh yeah.
amazing production, and I'm really excited to have a copy of this for myself, from my own shelf. But yeah, I really want people to be able to get their hands on it.
Yeah, and I would say if you are an aspiring writer and you're curious, yeah, the Mark is somebody that I would recommend based on reading this work, because what he gets right, like maybe the thing that is best about the whole entire series is the pacing. And again, if you are a long time listener to the podcast, I talk about it all the time. The thing that is hardest or that new creators seem to struggle with the most is the pacing, because you do have that restricted real estate on the page. It's not the same as live action. It's a totally different beast. And the pacing in this book is fantastic. Every single issue is paced within an inch of its life. And what I find interesting here is as I was going along and reading it, I was so drawn into the story, Mark, and then maybe no more so than in that issue 5. And then, like, as I finished each issue, like my desire to read the next issue kept going up, and then I get to the 5th issue, and that's still true, but there is no 6th issue, at least not yet. Would you like to return to this story? I mean, was it originally planned for more than 5 issues? I mean, I have to think so, the way that issue 5 ended.
Yeah, actually, there were 10 issues written, so I do have 5 more issues. What happened ultimately was the Breakneck team. James Bolton was the artist
Hmm.
who did all 5 issues, and he eventually like stepped away from comics and has a pretty successful photography business now. Matt Brown was our letterer for the first 4 issues, but he also kind of moved away from doing comics. So my buddy Michael Myers lettered the 5th issue. But yeah, I have 5 scripts left that really sort of take what you've already read and just like crank it up to 11. So I would, if the hardcover does well, if this campaign goes well, that may become a reality. Trying to do more Breakneck issues.
Would you go in search of an artist? Would you reach out to James, be like, "Hey, I know you're busy with your photography business, but would you want to come back and do this?" Or would it be a search for somebody new, or do you have somebody in mind?
Honestly, if James would want to come back, I would welcome him with open arms. I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately, but I do know somebody who has a kind of a similar sensibility about his art. So it's possible that we might be able to do something down the line.
Oh man, that would be fantastic. Because again, it's a story that really builds. I feel like you're just really cranking it up. Like probably around 9. I imagine the story probably gets to an 11 out of 10
But yeah,
in terms of like action and outrageousness. But yeah, again, I contribute a lot of that to the pacing. It's just paced so well. And it's just a cool, it's just a fun story. Like you said, like anybody who's a longtime comic reader, you're going to recognize those little Easter eggs. You're going to get a laugh. Um, and yeah, it's that subversion. Now, you did this a long time ago, like you mentioned before, and we've mentioned some of the other series or properties we could compare it to. Why was right now the right time to bring it back and try to have it find a new audience? Is it due to the popularity of things like The Boys and what have you?
a little bit. Yeah, I have to say, I want to try and take advantage of like this type of story, especially with The Boys, the TV show being so popular. I'm on this in the same boat as you. I watched the first season. It didn't really do it for me, but I mean, people love it,
Hmm.
obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm a stickler for comic accurate stuff,
Yeah,
and I
me
mean,
too.
it drives me crazy because there isn't a lot. You know what I mean? So all these comics that I love when they get turned into something else, at least I still have the comics. So, but yeah, really, I mean, it was around this time last year, I think, where I started talking to the guys at Invader about maybe doing like bringing Breakneck back, and they had sort of moved away from doing superhero stuff, which I
Mm.
which I totally get. It's kind of a hard sell when
Yeah.
it's Marvel or DC, right? Like doing
Yeah.
superheroes. So I just said like, hey, you know what? Like, let me see if I can do this on my own. So this Zoop campaign is a bit of an experiment on my part to see how what I can do, and if all goes well, there's other stuff I may want to Zoopify, and hey, maybe we'll do another Breakneck you know volume down the line too.
Yeah, again, everybody, I recommend it. It's inexpensive. It's a fantastic story. Really worth a read. And and yeah, if you like things like The Boys, and I love that you're kind of the same way as me. Like, yeah, I love the comic of The Boys. And I sort of feel like that was like a really cool story. I totally get why they change stuff around for live action. It's a different medium, so telling the exact same story and exact same pacing doesn't always work. They changed some fundamental things for me. And here's the thing, and maybe you feel the same way. If I had come to The Boys never having read the comic, I probably would be a huge fan of it like everybody else as well, because I don't have that comparison to make. But yeah, like the motivation for Carl Urban's character Butcher, like without his wife being actually dead, it's just like no, yeah,
Yeah.
so, but again, I don't begrudge anybody that likes it. Hey, that's great, that's your thing. I'd rather go back and read the comic again myself than watch the show. Um, but all that being said, this is a fantastic series. And as we're winding down here, Mark, anything else you want our audience to know about the series or about your work? Did I lose you?
Sorry, Jace. I think you froze up a bit there.
Oh, I was saying, yeah, I'll edit this out. Yeah, as we're winding down here, anything else that you want our audience to know about your work or about Breakneck specifically?
I just really hope people are, wanna read it. If you want something funny, something, like you said, a little subversive, not so serious. Like a popcorn movie that you can hold in your hand and read. That's really, that's what we're trying to do with Breakneck. And yeah, I just really hope people check it out. And I want to have a copy on my shelf. You want to have a copy on your shelf. Everybody wants to have a copy on their shelf. So let's make it happen.
Yeah, again, it's a really fantastic story. Everybody, again, it builds, and yeah, I really hope this does well and fully funds, and maybe even more so. That way, you have a head start on getting some of those next issues drawn and published at some point. So.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Well, Mark, thanks for taking the time. Best of luck with the campaign. The campaign is live as of now, everybody. There's about 3 weeks left. So again, link in the show notes. Go and check it out. Appreciate your time, Mark. And to all you people out there in the audience, whether you're listening on the audio only, whether you're checking us on YouTube, what have you, we appreciate you showing up. Thanks for the support as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks very much, Chase.